Yeah. Thanks for coming, folks. So here's our quick agenda. We have about 55 minutes here, and I'm going to probably present for roughly half of that. And then I think the more interesting part will really be in the discussion to have with you. So, I mean, we're almost through agenda item number 1 here with the welcome. Then we're going to state the problem that we want to discuss today, and then we'll talk about how data can maybe help address that problem, and then get to the Q&A. So here's the problem as we see it, I think. So much of Canada has climate action plans. So this is a study from the NZAP group out of Waterloo University. Almost everybody has made some sort of climate action plan or energy switch plan or whatever it may be. But we're going to miss our 2030 climate targets, our emission reduction targets. So this is similar in the US as well. Like lots of regions have climate action plans, even like Republican states have climate action plans, but we're missing the 2030 targets, and sometimes by like quite a margin. Like it's not that we've reduced a little bit, it's that emissions have gone up and we're not going to meet them by a large margin. So we're trying to think about how to this disparity, and that we have the plans, and in the plans we have a lot of information. We have and store inspire not happen. So today we'll talk a little bit about that and what it means, like maybe a little bit. I would say that what we'll go through today isn't necessarily like a public facing sort of thing. I would say up front that the hearts and minds of people have never been won by climate data graphs. I think that's maybe a different presentation or a different webinar conversation to have. But I think within municipal or government departments, within organizations, I think that you can do a lot with data to talk to people and show what the potential is for actions and what happens when you do take action. So I think, I mean, we showed the map of Canada with all the plans. If you are in Canada, then you are covered by those plans, and hopefully you've seen them and are familiar with some of the data visualizations. But I'll kind of walk through what we typically do in kind of a emissions reductions plan at SSG, and like some of the data that we represent in that plan. So this is kind of a linear progression through the types of plans we may have made for your municipality or local government. So this is a nested donut chart. So it has 2 rings. It has like the outer ring showing where all the emissions are from in this community. This community is West Vancouver, which I'll use ongoingly throughout the presentation as kind of a simple example to walk through. And then the inner ring just classifies the outer ring emissions by sector. So the outer ring is a little more precise. The inner ring is more high level. And this is often where we start. Like this is the scale of the challenge, and we try to identify, what is within our control to address this challenge in each of these sectors. And so this is like the starting piece of information that we would show council, that we would show staff, and say, look, locally, this is what we're dealing with. Here's where our emissions come from. Look at transportation sector. We need to concentrate the bulk of our efforts there, for example. You might start also with a higher level, like a global kind of visualization of like the carbon dioxide parts per million chart that hopefully we're all familiar with or something like that. And then show your local contribution to it through a chart like this. And I would say that this is the extent of how you should maybe use like a donut chart or a nested donut chart or a pie chart. It's not, it's only telling you one thing really. So it's good for emissions inventories, and I would leave it at that. So hopefully this is in a lot of your plans. And hopefully you also have this, the wedges diagram, in a lot of your plans. So in West Vancouver, we had business as usual, BAU, and business as planned, as well as a low carbon scenario. So we had three scenarios that we modeled. And the business as usual is this line across the top. This is where emissions are now over here. And this is where they're going in 2050 on the right-hand side. And then, these are the actions that were modeled for the business as planned. Business as planned is like the things that are in the works right now, the things that we've committed to either as a municipality or as the province. And this is the extent of the potential emissions reductions for each of those actions. So this graph, I think, is really important to kind of show what the potential reductions are from what is currently in the works. It shows us kind of, what the scale of the challenge is, and it shows us where we can get based on what we're doing now. So the story here is really, this is where we are now. And this is what our planned actions can achieve. And this is what can be achieved in each sector. This is contribution of each action. It's important to note that the efforts ramp up over time. So you kind of start with the low hanging fruit, we often call it, the easier actions. But in order to achieve the necessary emissions reductions, you have to ramp up those efforts over time, build on your successes, correct any mistakes that you've made. And I think importantly, when you're using like this visualization to talk to different departments or council who are making budget decisions on what to invest in, every action in every sector is important. So obviously some actions achieve more emissions reductions than others, but in order to get to the target, we need all the actions to happen. So hopefully you've seen this wedges diagram. Maybe it's broken down by this level of detail in terms of the different sectors, the different actions within each sector. And then this kind of convenient summary bar chart for the year 2050. So the wedges diagram is a pretty powerful summary of all of the different modeling and projection. So just quickly, another wedges diagram shows the effects of the low carbon scenario that we modeled. So this is the exact same graph as before, except this big blue area is the business as planned achievement, and then the low carbon actions are additional to that. And so we have additional actions in all the different sectors to get to that near net zero target of emissions in 2050. So the story here is that this is the additional effort we need. Some things are in the works, but it's not going to be enough to achieve our target. We need these additional efforts. And it is possible to achieve our targets, but kind of only if we take these actions in each sector and ramp them up over time. So those are our wedge diagrams. They're really important to understand and be able to describe to people. And the annotation is pretty important, I feel. Without the annotation, it just seems like a bunch of colors and what is really going on in this graph. So it's not necessarily like super intuitive, but a quick explanation usually does the trick for folks. We can also step back a little bit and just use a line chart to summarize, which is often kind of what decision makers want to know. It's just like, where are we? What can we do? Where are we? Where are we going? And where can we go if we take action? So the line chart is super simple. It just gives you the scale of the challenge. and comparing it to where we can go and where we've modeled we can go. I think importantly, one of the key messages is the longer we wait to act, the bigger the challenge will be. So, reducing from where we are now, around 270 kilotons. So yeah, the West Van scales in kilotons. Often it will be in gigatons for larger municipalities. So around 270 kilotons to six, that's already a pretty big challenge. But if we wait and it's almost 300 to six, that extra 30,000 tons a year becomes very challenging to address. So, there's some urgency, there's some time is of the essence sort of flavor to this. So the total, I'll just spend a little bit of time on energy use graphs here. So we were just looking at some emissions graphs, and we'll come back to emissions graphs, but often kind of the people in charge of decision making, or especially like facilities folks, or if we're dealing with utilities, or if we're dealing with like homeowners who want to be more energy efficient, etc. The energy use is often a better talking point. So here's West Vancouver's total energy use breakdown by sector. So we can see as we progress from the left side of this graph to the right, as time goes on, West Vancouver's population is increasing. With that come more buildings, come more vehicles, more use of services, etc., more energy use. And as we have more energy use, that typically correlates with higher emissions. So one thing to note, so obviously the residential sector, as as we get more homes, energy use is going up. As we get more commercial space, energy use is going up. Transportation actually decreases its energy use slightly, and that's because West Vancouver has such a high rate of electric vehicle turnover from gas vehicles. So it's not, energy use isn't increasing in every sector. It's going down a little bit in transportation. So it's important to know your graphs and kind of know what's going on in each sector so you can answer any of these types of questions. So this is the current projected energy use in each sector, and all departments can contribute or have a responsibility to decrease energy use to decrease emissions. Now, for the low carbon scenario that we modeled for West Van, it's a very different picture, right? Like this is the result of energy efficiency, of switching energy technologies with more efficient technologies. So we're actually decreasing energy use like crazy, even though the population is increasing, even though there's more vehicles, even though there's more homes and buildings. So energy use can be reduced in every sector. We see this huge reduction in the residential sector and in the transportation sector as the low carbon actions are implemented. So as we do retrofits to buildings to make them more energy efficient, as we switch to heat pumps, as we switch to electric vehicles and active transportation, the energy use is going way down. And so instead of, as it was before, where we expect this rise in energy with increasing everything, we're really halving our energy use, cutting our energy use in half here. If we take all the actions need to be implemented. So always compare these graphs side by side so you can show the drastic difference. And we'll talk about energy flows in a minute, but just before we get to that, these stacked column graphs that many of you have seen in your plans, they compare, a base year energy use or emissions, in this case it's energy use, to a target year energy use. And it shows in this case, the fuel type change. So for each sector, so we have residential, transportation, commercial, municipal, and we see that, in buildings, so residential buildings, commercial buildings, natural gas is a large emitter, and it's also providing most of the energy for those buildings. So those energy the energy use in those buildings, mostly natural gas, so mostly for heating. Uh, but through our different actions like uh, heat pump installations and energy efficiency in buildings, like improving building envelopes, we get that natural gas out of the system, so out of the residential and commercial buildings, and it's replaced by ambient. So ambient energy is heat pump energy, taking heat from the ambient surroundings. And also local electricity. In the case of West Vancouver, there's a lot of solar PV installations in their plan. So we're replacing natural gas with local electricity, heat pumps, and a little bit of grid electricity as well. And you can see, again, the total energy use in every sector drops substantially, and it's also replaced by a different fuel. So that's an important climate action, of course, is switching. We're switching from fossil fuel to a more efficient and way cleaner energy source. So these stacked column charts are very useful, I find, but they're also kind of packed with a lot of information, and you need to spend a bit of time on them. So if you're ever kind of presenting something like this, I would hesitate to present something like this, but it's great in a report when you have like a bit more space to explain what's going on. And when people do explain what's going on, I think it's very powerful. You can show how energy is being reduced and how exactly it's being replaced. And so here's a Sankey diagram, they're called, where we show the energy flows. And it's another way of representing those those stacked column charts. But it's kind of interesting because you get to see kind of where the flows of the different energies on the left end up being used, and also how much of it is useful energy and how much of the energy is lost. So in this case, natural gas is providing half of all energy used, and homes use half of all energy, and then 1/3 of the energy that is produced is wasted. And most of that waste comes from transportation. This is gas and diesel, which, gas and diesel cars are only like 10 to 20% efficient. Most of the energy just gets lost as heat and does not actually drive the vehicle. And it's been that way for 120 years. We haven't improved that technology very much. So with the low carbon actions in West Van, it changes the landscape quite a bit, as we saw in the stacked column graph. So now we have a lot more electricity, a lot more ambient energy in the system, and this locally produced solar energy in the system. The homes are still using the bulk of energy, but the total amount of energy has been reduced substantially. And uh, the losses in the system are 80% less because we've electrified everything. And so being able to explain that, not only is it important to reduce emissions by getting rid of fossil fuels in your system, uh, you're also wasting a lot less energy through electrification. All electric appliances, all electric vehicles are far, far more energy efficient than natural gas or diesel technologies. So usually people are really on board with like not wasting things. So not wasting energy ticks a box for most people. And then explaining this is also a bit of work, I would say. This is not super intuitive for most people. But if you have a bit of time in a report or something to explain this, it can be very powerful. Okay, so similar to the energy graph we saw, the stacked area chart, this is the emissions equivalent. So these are often really useful to have side by side. We have our business as usual energy, and this is the emissions that result in each sector. Kind of the same story, like more population equals this. As emissions increase, your reduction efforts require more effort. So better to act sooner than later, and then the different descriptions of the different sectors. The emissions of the low carbon scenario graph is even more drastic than the energy graph because we're targeting a near net zero emissions future here. And we can see how the efforts are, they will pay off if the actions are implemented. So the actions that we modeled, if we do them, check it out, we can make our targets. So this is largely energy efficiency, switching from fossils to renewables. This is done through like buildings, codes, and ordinances for new buildings. But retrofits are really the main driver of the building sector emissions savings. And then transportation, I mean, people like to say the market is going to take care of this as EVs become more prominent. I would say that in order for that to happen, you do need policies and you do need actions to implement the charging infrastructure to make it safe and okay and comfortable for everyone to use electric vehicles. And let's not forget about active transportation, AT, also getting people out of their vehicles and walking and biking and rolling. The last thing I'll say about this graph, there is a little bit of emissions left in the system, and that's we call it legacy emissions. Some of it is from waste. This is waste that is currently in the landfill that is going to emit for decades. And it's just very difficult to address that without some sort of like very serious landfill methane capture infrastructure, which lots of municipalities do have, but it's only so effective as well. And then notably the fugitive emissions that we have at the top of the graph here disappear. So when we're not using natural gas anymore, we don't just have like methane escaping from the transportation of it. And then again, showing these graphs side by side is pretty powerful. Like, look at where we're going. All the sectors are increasing except for transportation in terms of emissions. And look at where we can go if we take these actions. And every sector has reductions. So getting into a little bit more specifics. So I think probably everyone has seen the wedges diagrams and hopefully some of the energy and emissions diagrams we've gone through. Maybe fewer people have seen something like this where it's digging into the data a little bit more and showing things like the number of space heating systems that are in a community and how they change over time. So on the left, we have the business as usual graph here, and we're showing that, you know, if we keep going the way we're going, we keep building homes the way we're building them, and other buildings as well, we're increasing natural gas systems. So the number of natural gas systems is going up. The number of resistance heat systems going up slightly. Number of heat pumps. This is like kind of the older style heat pumps that are not super efficient, being maintained or like increasing a little bit. And so if we don't do anything, we just keep building the way we're building, we're creating this huge problem for us in the future where, you know, we're emitting more and we have these kind of stranded assets we've locked ourselves in. And by 2050, we have like a huge job to do to get fossil fuels out of the building system. Under the low carbon actions, where we're really using new building codes to be more efficient and to require electric heat pumps, not natural gas heat pumps, which use natural gas all the time, or even hybrid heat pumps use natural gas all the time. They have to be electric. Those scrap the natural gas use, also replace all the baseboard, the resistance heating from electric baseboards, because the heat pumps, the air source heat pumps are just so much more efficient, 300 to 500% more efficient than those baseboards, even in very cold climates. So digging into the data like this, the story is really like we're replacing antiquated systems with new, way more efficient, way cleaner systems. And we're starting small, the low-hanging fruits, like the buildings where we can get the most bang for our buck. Maybe we're taking advantage of subsidies and grants. Maybe we're targeting older neighborhoods or like larger buildings that will are high emitters and will benefit from these heat pumps. And then over time, we're ramping it up so that it's just automatic. Like every building needs clean and efficient heat pumps. So this is the kind of data that modeling like ours can provide, and we have in our modeling and in our outputs. And it also helps demonstrate the scale of the challenge at a more precise level. So, this is talking about the number of systems that need to be replaced. It's not just saying, well, yeah, we have like a lot of buildings and we need to retrofit them and we need to install heat pumps. It's saying, well, actually, we have like 19,000 heating systems right now, and we're going to have 33,000 heating systems. And so if we keep adding natural gas as those extra 16,000 systems, we have a problem here. And if we don't, and instead those systems, we replace them with ambient heat from heat pumps, you know, we're not locking ourselves in. We're being more efficient. We're getting rid of emissions in the building system. And so that's kind of the story we can tell with these graphs. So similarly, you'll recall we had the stacked column graph where we showed kind of where the energy sources, where the energy is coming from, the different energy sources. Here's the number of space heating systems by heat source. So, and this is how many we're replacing over time. So this is not BAU versus low carbon. This is residential and commercial here. And these are the types of homes that we're retrofitting with heat pumps. These are the types of industrial, commercial, institutional buildings. And so this is really showing the scale of the challenge. So these are the retrofit rates that we need to achieve in order to achieve our emissions reductions targets. And it's daunting. Like when you see this graph, you're like, oh, wow, by like 2040, we need to retrofit all of our buildings under the West Vancouver plan, and we need to retrofit all of our commercial space. And we're going to start out small here in like 2025, 2026, but we're getting to like 2035, and we're doing a lot of retrofits every year. So this is, thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of retrofits, depending on your city. And so when we're thinking about numbers like that, we also have to think about the workforce and like how do we ramp up our workforce so that we have contractors who are skilled in doing these retrofits and installing these heat pumps and these other systems like solar PV panels, so that we can meet our targets. I think you're just going to be hitting your head against the wall if you have all these policies and actions in place and staff, municipal or otherwise, who are willing to do this, but we don't have the workforce to make it happen. So these are all conversations to have in your departments. And again, the last thing, the longer we wait, the greater the retrofit backlog. So getting on this early and sticking with it year after year is going to help us meet our targets. But waiting for like the perfect system to be set up, or like a system that can't be taken advantage of by like a few people who don't really, need a subsidy or something, it's not worth perfecting the system, because you're just going to have this huge backlog that you have to deal with at some point. It's better to get going and make mistakes and, learn from those mistakes, but make the turnover happen as quickly as possible. Okay, the last graph in this section, before I briefly talk about adaptation, is the transportation mode share change graph. So this is a percent share diagram. So it's 100% here on the vertical axis. And it shows change over time from left to right. And it's showing the percent of our transportation mode share for local trips. So you can also have these graphs for outbound trips, for inbound trips, or for total trips. As you probably know, you have most control as a municipality over your local trips, your commuting trips in and out of boundary. are more challenging. Not that you can't do it, of course, with transit and those and like longer distance bike trips or something, but your local your local sphere is what you have the most control over. So in West Van, we're changing from only 1.5% of trips made by bike to almost 10% in 2050, increasing transit trips a little bit, increasing walking trips a little bit, and decreasing personal vehicle trips. So this story is saying that 13% of our local vehicle trips can be shifted to active transportation and transit. Uh, and part of West Vancouver's effort is through infill development. And infill development, like focusing new development on existing lands, if it's densifying or if it's developing brown fields or gray fields, this is one way to kind of automatically achieve your mode shift by offering services and jobs where homes already exist. More people are going to bike, walk, use transit to get there, of course. But importantly, like providing the correct infrastructure for biking, walking, and transit is important. Deprioritizing personal vehicles is important. So parking lots, things like that, retrofitting those to encourage these other modes of transportation will get us there. So this graph is, I find, really effective in showing, what the potential is for mode shift and trips. And you can envision like lots of these different types of, or lots of these graphs used for different types of transportation actions. Okay, quickly on adaptation, because the great thing about adaptation modeling is the wonderful maps you can make. And so this is Kelowna during the 2000. Well, actually, this is just the urban heat island effect of Kelowna. We modeled Kelowna and we were focusing a little bit on the heat dome from 4 or 5 years ago, which has some like pretty intense maps showing where it was really hot. And these areas that are all in the reds and oranges were extremely hot during that heat dome. And so you can see the urban heat island is really along this Highway 97 corridor here. This is downtown Kelowna. This is where all the pavement is, right? This is where there's not a lot of trees. It's very hot. So this is the urban heat island effect of all that those hard surfaces and those dense buildings. Um, and this is where we're headed without intervention. So we're looking at climate change, increasing temperatures, and it's increasing the urban heat island effect along that corridor by at least a few degrees. A lot of these areas are getting a lot hotter over the next 30, 40, 50 years. And so what we can also show with modeling, here's the graph that was on the right, it's now on the left. This is the urban heat island that we can expect in 2070. We can also show what happens when we take actions like planting trees. And so just by planting like a few thousand trees along this corridor, you can see this map compared to this map, we're decreasing the projected temperatures by a few degrees in each of these neighborhoods. And maps are great and hopefully intuitive. I would argue these are like a little busy, but you can tell at a glance, things are getting worse if we don't do anything. Oh, things get better if we do something. So even if you don't get into the specifics of the maps, maps are very helpful at conveying a point quickly, hopefully. The other part of this story, I would say, it's we're not just in for like hotter days and increased heat island, and we can mitigate that through these actions. The other part of the story is we're saving people's lives. So it's great to have trees around and it's cooling things. The outdoor environment is a little bit better, but it's not just that. It's that we're protecting people, especially the elderly, from potential death during heat waves, which we did see in BC a few years ago when the heat dome struck. So translating the maps into numbers of people that are protected is like a very powerful way to get support for your climate actions. Okay, that was a lot of talking from me, and I'm more than happy to take a break
That
and listen to what you might have to say.
Well, before we jump into everyone else's data, there were just two clarifying questions, Jeremy, because we haven't heard enough of your voice.
Oh, good.
If you if you want to scroll back to slide 23 with the stacked bar, Seth just wanted to clarify what you mean by ambient energy.
Yeah, so the energy is so this is by heat or by fuel source. So you can see, natural gas, grid electric energy are pretty easy. Uh, but yeah, we're all familiar with that. Ambient energy is the energy that's being taken from the air by heat pumps. So that's just an ambient temperature difference between the inside of a building and the outside of a building, and the heat pump can use that source instead of a fuel source.
And then if you want to scroll to slide 34.
I don't have the slide numbers here, so
Oh.
which number? Which,
It's the building's number of space heating systems by heat source. There you go. Just another clarification question between the difference between heat pump air and heat pump.
oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Sorry. So, or I think I mentioned it on a previous slide, but it was totally not obvious. The regular heat pump here is just kind of like an older model. Like the older model heat pumps are not that super efficient. They're still pretty good, but they're not nearly as efficient as a new heat pump. We just call them heat pump air in the model, which is substantially more efficient than the older models of heat pumps. So we're also replacing those old models in what we've done for Westman.
Awesome. So yeah, we would love to hear from any other questions that folks might have. But also if you have any examples of data that you're struggling to communicate or any sort of questions around a specific graph that maybe is in your plan that you're having a hard time translating, um, yeah, please feel free to share. I think if you post it as an image in the chat, we can actually open that up and share a screen, um, which would be great.
Oh, hey, Tom Pierre is here. I didn't see you join. Hey, Tom Pierre.
Jeremy, I think you mentioned this. Well, thanks. First of all, thanks. This was really fun to look at. I appreciate you matching the story and providing some of that framing before describing the details of each of the graphs. It's helpful to know how these might be used in context. I think you mentioned at the beginning that typically, well, maybe this is a question. Who do you find is the best audience for these types of graphs, and who have you found um, are not?
Yeah, so I've definitely heard it said that you should not bring a graph to an emotional gunfight. So if you're going to like a public council meeting or something like that, and you're trying to sell your climate actions, your retrofits, your EVs, whatever, uh, presenting it all through graphs is not going to get you very far. I think it's more the story that you tell without the graphs that is more important.
Mm.
But I think in order for decision makers to justify the decisions that they are making, you do need some data to rely on. So especially as staff, like as municipal staff, governmental staff, you need to show that what you are planning is going to have the effects to get you to your targets.
Mm.
And so, yes, you can present this information to council. I think some of it, the very simple graphs, like the graphs that show like two or three things, not the graphs that show 10 or 12 things. And I think that that provides some context, but you can't rely on those graphs winning your argument for you. but the decision makers do need the report with the graphs and the explanations to point to say this is why we made these decisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
That's our experience anyway. Like it's quite easy to overwhelm people with data and graphs, and it's kind of going against your what you're trying to do.
I had one like more specific question, and I think it was the stacked graphs.
Yeah.
So not knowing the numbers either.
Like the column graphs, like
Yeah.
this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I first saw this, I did find it visually compelling, but also like you really had to do a lot of tracking between like
Yeah.
bar and the key and the bar and the key and the bar and the key.
Yeah.
And wondered if you ever did some like grouped it between like renewable energy, fossil fuels as like an introductory story. And then, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And that reminds me of like the wedges diagram, like this one, for example. So yeah, sometimes we do just try to simplify because there's so much going on in the graph. So like this one, for example, I guess I don't have the super simple version of this one where it's just like, this is what the business has planned accomplishes. This is what the low carbon scenario
Mhm.
accomplishes. If you can imagine this all being one color, or
Mhm.
kind of like, the line graph with just like one big wedge.
I loved this one because it's like it's the least exciting and
Yeah,
uh like wildly meaningful at the same time.
right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right. I think it's a good point that there's like, dozens of ways to represent your data. You can, uh, roll everything up to present it really simply, or you can break it down to present the details. Annotation is really important. So not just having a legend, but like little call outs that show like what's what, as
Mhm.
long as there aren't, a dozen of them or more on your slide. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Monica. Tom Pierre?
Hey, folks. Thanks,
Hey,
Jeremy.
hey, Dunker.
Hey. Yeah, that was an excellent presentation, and it makes me think about the number of times when I've seen these graphs kind of pass by very quickly and people kind of missing the story behind it. So we can see the experience of how many times you've gone through these. I think this is like an amazing tutorial, and I hope, yes, you did say you're recording it. I think it would be very useful for many people. I have a question for you. So I was also very excited to see that your modeling allows you to say like, okay, here's how many dwellings we're going to touch per year, how many heat pumps we're going to install. And I also found that that's when the numbers start to make sense, because that's where it starts to be a bit concrete. Um, I do, like, we've had a challenge in the past, and I'm curious how you've tackled this, is putting these number in context of like natural replacement rate. Like, are we, and relating it to workforce, for example, like, are we, doubling our innovation rate, or will we just kind of steering it in a different direction? So like, how do you address like these, tangents of these graphs versus what would happen anyway in terms of stock turnover?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that that's a good point. So, we can present all the rosy pictures of how we're going to achieve our targets, and that we can do it. But when you get into the details of the data and you realize, oh, that means retrofitting like 10,000 homes every year, that is kind of overwhelming and just demonstrative of the effort required. So in our modeling, we do have like natural replacement rates included, so we can show that. So we can have like a similar set of graphs, and we could show, well, this is the number of homes, the number of buildings that are being demolished and replaced with more efficient ones, or these are the number of homes that are just kind of expected to naturally update their technologies to be more efficient. So we can extract that data, parse it, and show it alongside what additional needs to be done. So I think that that's quite useful. And I think, Tom Pierre, you're right. Like some counselors, for example, will ask that sort of question, like, well, isn't this kind of happening anyway? Like, do we really need to accelerate our efforts? And yeah, you could show, well, it is happening, but only for like 1% of the homes or something. And then you can show there's still like 99% of the building stock that you need to address somehow.
Yeah, I think that story, like having a visual of that would be super helpful. Like this is what the natural and you know, where are we just steering people towards a different choice? They were going to do something, we're just trying to get them to do something else. Because also, like, you want to communicate, yes, there's more effort needed, but also on the other side, you got to like, whoa, this is like, we can't possibly reach this.
Yeah.
So, but like that sweet spot where like, and you know, and the actual due diligence of critical tests, like, is this a realistic model? Can we actually do this? And what sort of stress are we putting on our system there? So like that, your numbers are super powerful there, and it'd be very interesting to see like one graph that tells that story.
Yeah. Well, we're relying on you for that, Tom Pierre, and your work with buildings, but you do a lot of work with buildings. We need you to get that information out there and tell people what to do, what needs to be done. What else do we want to do here, Amy?
Well, we have time for maybe one more question, but I'm also happy to just showcase an example of a city that got kind of creative with how to use their data in not graph form. And we can close out and have some more discussion or feedback through written communication afterwards. We do have time for one more if somebody wanted to squeeze in either a comment or.
People want to see the video.
So let's play that. While we're watching this video, I'm going to be putting in just a survey in the chat. If you can help us understand a little bit more about how you experienced this webinar, that really helps us in shaping this webinar series to be helpful and useful for you. So again, this is the city of Peterborough, and I love this approach that they've taken.
Do you want Peterborough to save $1 billion? We are KPR's Youth Leadership and Sustainability class, and we are your future. The city's new Climate Change Action Plan calls on all of us to step up to this challenge.
We had an old plan from 2017 that had some issues, making it hard to implement. A bold new plan that will take the city to almost net zero greenhouse gas emissions will come before City Council in February.
This plan is an important opportunity for our city. We have the chance to join thousands of communities around the world in trying to create a more secure future. Our new local plan will impact so many aspects of our lives in positive ways. Here, we're going to focus on three things. First of all, housing.
Housing is important to all of us, whether we own, rent, or struggle to find a roof overhead. We all understand the tolls of energy bills, and so does the new Climate Change Action Plan.
It would call for higher energy standards on new homes, as well as financially supporting retrofitting projects. This includes the installation of heat pumps and the replacement of windows and doors for proper insulation on homes already built.
Heat pumps are a really efficient heating system that produces very few greenhouse gases. Better insulation ensures that you don't lose more on that heating and cooling system. So if we go through with the Climate Change Action Plan, homeowners and renters will save much more money in the long run.
Now everyone can afford a cool summer and toasty holidays, but we can't spend all of our time inside.
During COVID, we weren't able to go over to friends' houses, but we were still able to hang out by using green space to talk and walk our dogs.
Ever since then, I've spent more time outside because it's calming and it helps me connect with nature and my pets. It's a great third space to hang out.
Green space is beneficial for everyone's mental health. I love I have a place where I can sit down, relax, and take a deep breath of fresh air. It's also beneficial for physical health. I can go outside and jog with my dog instead of sitting at home all day.
Having trees helps create clean air, cool down cities by providing shade, and work to shelter when the weather's bad. Preserving our green spaces means that we can have more animals living in our community, improves aesthetic value, biodiversity, and builds resilience to climate change.
Once you get out of the parks and onto the streets, you'll notice Peterborough is a very car-centric city. But young people want real, sustainable transportation options. They want to be able to drive their cars, use public transit, and feel safe as a pedestrian or a cyclist.
As someone who doesn't have his license, biking is how I get around. However, it's tricky to find a safe and efficient way through the city. This plan will ensure that I and other cyclists have a safe route through Peterborough's bike lanes and infrastructure.
More people on bikes means less people in cars, which means more open, free and moving streets for everyone. And it doesn't stop at just bikes.
Public transportation gives people a chance to relax. They can look at their phone, write an email, they can take their eyes off the road. You can't do that in a car. As buses make the switch to electricity, they'll be much quieter, making them much more of an enjoyable ride.
Transportation currently accounts for 50% of Peterborough's greenhouse gas emissions, but the Climate Change Action Plan will help fix that. By improving and electrifying these alternate means of transportation, Peterborough will improve air quality, reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, and make transportation accessible for everyone.
The consultants who created this plan calculate that if we can implement all of these things and the other elements of the plan, we can save our community $1 billion in the next 25 years.
The City of Peterborough has so much to gain from this opportunity, but it will only happen if our councillors approve it. And to do that, they need to hear from you.
We know what we want. What do you want? Now, it's up to you.